Hi everyone, I'm China Pace, a young adult fantasy writer and author of the Dreamworld Chronicles series. So today's video is all about writing process, and this is one of my favorite topics to discuss because I find it so interesting learning about how other writers work and how everyone crafts their manuscript differently. So today I'm going to give you guys a behind the scenes look into my personal writing process and show you guys how I write a book from beginning to end. So let's dive right in. So when I write a book, I always start with an idea. That's how it always begins for me. And ideas for me are everywhere. I'm one of those people that sort of finds inspiration literally everywhere, even in the most mundane things like a tube of chapstick. So I usually can glean ideas from anywhere and anything, but a lot of times my ideas come from dreams I've had, or books I'm currently reading, or some creepy folkloric legend I read about, or just by me asking the question, what if? But the thing is, my ideas never come in the form of plot. I find that really interesting because usually I think of story and plot later, but when an idea initially comes to me, it's usually either a character or a certain scene, just like snatches of scenes, almost like a dream that you sort of vaguely remember the next day, but only like a few key flashes, and you can't really think like, what was that dream about? You just remember certain weird stuff. That's kind of how it is for me. Or it'll be like a feeling, a mood, a setting. That's kind of how my ideas come. And once I have an idea, that's when I go into outlining. Now, when I first get an idea, I typically let it percolate for a while. I spend a lot of time just in my head imagining things long before I ever put anything to paper. And so it's really during these brainstorming sessions that the plot and the setting and the characters sort of develop. But again, it's in snatches. It's weird. I never really have a clear image, but I'll have like these flashes of scenes and people and feelings and setting. And I usually try during these like brainstorming sessions to write them all down. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes they just stay in my head and I have to sift through all that later. But once I do spend some time trying to piece it all together and fill in the blanks, that's when I start my formal outline. But because I am like 60%, maybe 70% a discovery writer, my outline is very bare bones skeleton outline. It's never complex, it's always very basic. Typically just the beginning, some sort of idea of scenes that I may want to add in the middle, and then the ending. But specific details and specific subplots and character development, I usually just let my imagination take over as I'm writing. I don't usually plan all that beforehand. But I do a very in-depth chapter outlining system, which I'll probably do a separate video on that because describing it all in this video would probably just take too long. So that's how I do my outlining. And then once I finish that, once I have that bare bones skeleton of an outline, then I start writing the first draft. So my writing process for a first draft really varies with every book, but there are some constant elements that sort of remain the same throughout all my books. First of all, I always write chronologically. So I start from chapter 1 and I go all the way through to the end. Sometimes, but this is really rare, sometimes if I'm going through a really intense writing slump and I hate, or not hate, but I'm just so unmotivated and uninspired to work on the current scene I'm writing, I'll jump out and go to someplace else, in the middle or closer to the end, but that's usually rare because, I don't know, for some reason it's like I don't know how you describe it. It's a quirk of mine that I can't jump out of chronological order because it drives me crazy for some strange reason. So I always write chronologically from beginning to end, only very rarely jumping out of scenes and into another scene if my sanity needs it. And another thing that stays the same throughout every book I write are my writing notebooks. I cannot survive as a writer without my writing notebooks. Probably 50, maybe 60% of my writing is done by hand in one of my writing notebooks. So definitely very vital for me. I do a lot of my brainstorming, outlining, character notes, world building notes, all of that usually in a big binder by hand. Usually my main writing, the manuscript itself is on my laptop, but again, I do a lot of it by hand as well. So it's very important for me to have notebooks. I don't know why that is. I think part of it is that writing by hand for me is very therapeutic and relaxing, and also it seems to refuel my creativity a lot of the times, because sometimes I get really tired of just staring at the computer screen, but if I spend some time writing by hand, it refreshes my brain and makes it easier and a lot more fun for me to keep writing. So very important for me to have my writing notebooks. But aside from that, how I write a first draft, it really just varies from book to book. When I was working on Sweet Nightmares, the first book in my series, about a little over a year ago now, I was writing every day. I still try to write every day, but sometimes I skip a day. Writing every single day, and I had like a daily quota of this is how many words I have to reach. And I'm not stopping, and I'm not giving myself a break until I reach that quota. And needless to say, that approach didn't last very long. I wrote book 1 and book 2 like that, and then after Bitter Dreams, I was just like, okay, I've got to change something about my writing process, because I was going through burnout and writing slumps and just hating everything I was writing. It was just a really hard time. So I don't work as hard anymore, meaning I don't set huge word count goals for myself every day and, just work myself to the bone trying to accomplish a daily goal. I usually will still write every day, but that's just kind of because writing is like breathing for me. So even if it's like a sentence or a paragraph, I always will try to write every day because I have to write. I have to do it. So I still write every day, but it's not like today I must write 3,000 words or I'm gonna die. That's how it was in the past, and that caused a lot of problems for me, and it really made writing into drudgery and not fun. And I'm all about fun and joy and excitement in the writing process now, so I've had to change that aspect of my writing process. So now I just will write every day, but I don't give myself a set goal. I usually just write until I feel exhausted, or I feel like I want to stop for a break, or just when the ideas run out, and then I know I need to refill my creative well, read a book for a while, or watch a movie or something like that. Now, when I'm working on a manuscript, I go through stages, and when and how this happens differs with every book, but it's always the same. I go through this stage first of being very excited, very just like, this book is the best thing I've ever written, and I love the characters, and I'm just obsessed with this story. I want to write all the time so I can know what happens next. It's like this just intense fervor for my writing and my story. And then I hit this point where it just takes a sharp drop, and all of a sudden my writing is terrible, I'm terrible, everything is terrible, I can't write, I'm struggling even to read, just not fun times. And then I'll kind of go through that for a while, and then I'll reach another point where things are kind of gradually going up again, and I'm excited again. And then again, usually towards the end, usually when I'm working on the last, like the third act of the story towards the end, is when I hit another harsh drop. And then that's very difficult. But for this book that I'm working on, the 5th book in my series, the beginning was so awesome. It was like that fervor that always happens. And then I hit a really bad writing slump when I was starting the 2nd act. And that was pretty bad for a couple weeks. And now I'm getting excited again, which is great. But I'm sure pretty soon I'll have another drop because it's my routine at this point. I used to get really upset about it because I was like, why am I like this? Why do I keep hating my writing and then loving it? I was like, I thought this was odd, but after writing this many books and having the same thing occur over and over again, I'm like, yep, this is my routine now. This is a pattern. And I've learned to just embrace all of it. I definitely don't like or enjoy the slumps and the hard patches, but like I said, they're all part of the writing process, and I'm working on embracing every aspect of it. Anyway, once I finish a draft, then we go into the editing stage. And for me, I usually put a book off for at least a month, maybe 2, maybe 3 months before I even look at it again. So I put it aside, move on to something else, and while I'm working on that, the other book is like sitting off to the side, waiting for its revisions. And after enough time has passed, after I feel like I'm ready to revisit it, I'll go and I'll start the revision process, which for me is usually 3 or 4 distinct rounds of revisions. And the first one is just reading straight through from beginning to end. I don't touch anything, I don't edit anything, even if there is like a blaring typo in my face, I just move past it. Because my goal at this stage of the editing process is just to read it all the way through, to see how it reads, to see where the big picture problems are, to see where the inconsistencies are, to just get an idea of what happened, like what the story ended up as and what I'm working with now. And once I finish that, then I move on into stage 2, which is a big picture edit. And this is usually plot holes and character inconsistencies and just any of the big picture stuff, like the very big errors, like the glaring errors in plot and storyline. I don't usually do anything with the prose or grammar or anything related to the language or the mechanics. This is usually just all about storyline and characters. So I do another pass, going through all the way, clearing all the big picture issues, and then in stage 3, I start a line edit, which is all about language, all about prose and words, and cutting words and adding words and descriptions and all that good stuff. And that's probably my least favorite stage because I don't know why, it's just kind of like pulling teeth at times, but I do it because sometimes when I'm working on a first draft, I will just want to plow through to the next scene that I won't really flesh out a setting or a description of a person. So it'll be like white room syndrome or, just a very bare bones description. And so when I'm doing line edits, I'll go and fill all that in and flesh all that out. Or if I have over described something and been too wordy, I will use that opportunity to cut some things out. I will keep what I think the story needs and cut what I think the story doesn't need. And then I move into the last level of editing, which usually ends up being about 3 more rounds, which is copy editing, which for me just means clearing up typos, fixing punctuation, fixing just general errors like, you know, a misplaced word or a misspelled word or anything like that. That's like the very last stage I do. And I usually do that like 3 or 4 times. I usually have that many rounds where I'll go from beginning to end, just picking at it with a fine-tooth comb, trying to find as many typos as I can, and then trying not to beat myself up if I don't get all of them, because you can't. You just can't get all of them. It's impossible. And so once that's done, then I'm done, and I usually count the book as completely finished by then. Although I do typically do one more copy editing pass, one more checking for typos and things like that before I will upload it to like Amazon and, you know, all the publishing vendors. So all in all, there's probably like 6 or 7, 8, 9 maybe rounds of revision. And revisions are my least favorite part, so that's fun. But no, honestly, I like every part of the process, because on the one hand, it's really relieving and nice to have a finished manuscript and to just be able to know that I did it yet again and have it here, all done and complete. And even though I don't like revisions, there is that good part of it, is knowing that I've just, you know, finished a whole book and now I can, you know, polish it. But definitely my favorite part of the process is the drafting stage. What are you guys' favorite part of the writing process? I'm really curious to know. I've always found this so interesting, hearing about how other writers work. You know, some writers say they hate drafting and that it's awful and they only really care about the revisions. And then other writers like me say that they can't stand revisions and they only like drafting. So how do you guys feel about it? Tell me in the comments. I'm really curious to know. And I think that's all. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you liked this little glimpse into how I work on a manuscript. It was really fun talking about it, and I'll probably make another video soon about how I outline, because I sort of have a lot more to say on that topic and on my particular method of outlining. So I'll see you guys next time, and thank you for watching. Be sure to like and comment and subscribe and hit the little notification bell if you want to be notified when I release a new video. And that's all for now, guys. So I'll see you later. Bye!